Okay, so I had King Henry the Fourth, Part 1, and there are two specific, plot points in King Henry the Fourth, Part 1, and they basically, meet at a certain stage, which is the end, pretty much, and it's basically, so one of the points has to do with King Henry, and then his relationship with his son, Prince Harry. And the plot point of it is just that their relationship is strained. And there's a lot of issues with it because King Henry is disappointed in his son. He's not happy with the way that he is and the things that he's doing. And it makes sense because Prince Harry is off doing all these things. He's off with, robbers and all these different things. And he's doing all these bad things. And it's just putting a real strain on their relationship. And one point in that is a character that embodies that. Well, I'm gonna get to the characters later, but a character that embodies that whole idea is Falstaff, and he's Prince Harry's number one friend, and pretty much his worst influence. He matches him very well in their wording and stuff, but he's one of the worst people for Prince Harry to actually be around, and he's probably one of the reasons that King Henry doesn't feel like he's very proud of his son. And then the other plot point of the story is the issues with rebellion. So there's a whole issue with the kingdoms and all these battles and everything, and it's just causing a lot of issues. And Prince Henry, or King Henry, feels issues with himself because of the people, and he's trying to do what's best for the people, but he also feels guilty about the past, and then he feels his strain with his son, and there's just all of these different things working together to build the story. And so the play continues as the disappointment builds of King Henry and Prince Harry, and it just keeps building, and he keeps getting more fed up with him, and for a little bit he kind of wishes that he was Hotspur, which is he has the family of the people that helped get King Henry into power, and he starts to become basically an enemy of Prince Harry, pretty much just because of jealousy. And so there are different battles that start going on, and the turning point of it all, and where both themes meet, is basically where Prince Harry gets into a combat with Hotspur, and Prince Harry wins, and that's when it kind of restores King Henry's faith in Prince Harry, but it doesn't really restore their relationship. It doesn't restore their relationship until there's a battle, and Prince Harry actually saves King Henry's life, and that's what really brings their relationship back to what it should be. And and one thing about the characters is the diction and word plays that they use. And one of the example of this is the word grace. Falstaff uses grace in a few different ways. He uses it as virtue, like what you think of with grace. He uses it as grace as in talking to the king. So there's just different word plays that go on throughout the story, and it's a huge part of the story. It adds depth to the characters as well as the story itself. Another character that uses a lot of puns and word plays is Hotspur. Both of them go back and forth, and they're very particular about using things that could mean different things, and it makes the audience think, and it really adds depth to the characters that they are and to the story itself, because there are just different things that the audience gets to think about because of the way that they speak. The biggest example of this is, again, the whole grace situation, because it's used in like a few different ways, and it's a really cool way to get certain points across, because the characters really deepen the audience's understanding, and it really makes the audience look at different perspectives and different ways to even see the situation. And it really like makes the audience think deeper into the characters and everything that the character's saying. Like even if the character isn't saying something that's like a wordplay, the audience is looking for it. The audience is like, oh, what does this mean? Like, what is this? Because sometimes they use it in different ways, so, oh, I really need to think about this more. And it deepens the audience's understanding of the story and the situation and the character and the setting and literally everything. So it's a really good way for Shakespeare to have even written it with the word plays and puns that he uses. Shakespeare is known for these kinds of word plays and things in his works, and he made these, I think, for different reasons, honestly. And I suspect that, like, one reason of that is for amusement, because, like, and it's for deepening the understanding. I think there's just different ways and reasons that he even put them in. And it has different effects on the audience. It can serve as amusement, it can serve as clarification, it can serve as just a point to like make the audience think more and look into the story more and look into the characters. And another example is like Hotspur. He uses a lot of puns, and it kind of makes sense because like we have Falstaff and Prince Harry that make puns and word plays and stuff, and then there's Hotspur, who's supposed to be like basically like the enemy of Prince Harry because he's jealous of him, and it's just funny that they can like butt heads, but he's also kind of like him in a way because they use the same kind of puns, and it's kind of like a parallel, which is kind of funny in a sense. It's kind of ironic. And yeah, it all serves to deepen the story and deepen the audience's understanding of the story. It's definitely interesting to me that, like, only certain characters have a lot of prevalent wordplay, because mostly, like, when you think of the wordplay in this play, you think of Prince Harry, Falstaff, and Hotspur. And I think that's an interesting layer to the story, because like Prince Harry and Falstaff, it kind of makes sense because they're like out of the box. Like they're not exactly like the straight like dependent people that like people would want. Like they're more like the sarcastic like puns, word plays, those kinds of people. And then you also have Hotspur, that is like the parallel to Prince Harry. And I think it's just a really interesting way that Shakespeare had written it. And it really allows the audience to understand the story better, in a way. And some wordplay examples are obviously like the grace situation that I said. But there's also, they said, Falstaff said, "Why, Hal, 'tis my vocation. Hal, 'tis no sin for a man to labor in his vocation." And it's just kind of a funny little thing that he said, and it gets the point across, and it gets Falstaff's like personality across to the audience, and it's also kind of like funny, like, oh, that was clever, and it shows that he's clever even though he's not the best of people, and he doesn't really care about morality or what anyone else has to say, and it adds depth to the character, and it's a very efficient way of adding to the character and adding to the story. Another wordplay example is when Hotspur said, "To put down Richard, that sweet lovely rose, and plant this thorn, this canker bowling broke." And it's another little funny wordplay, and they're just throughout the entire play, and it really adds layers to the story. It's definitely a very effective way that Shakespeare wrote it, and the plots, they match up so very well when they cross over towards the end. It kind of reminds me of the crossover points in the musical that we watched, the last 5 years, because, you know, it starts at two different points and then it meets in the middle, and I like that King Henry it started at like it has the two different points throughout the entire thing, and then they converge in this one spot, and it's a turning point of everything, and then it just flips, and then pretty much everything's like okay, sort of, even though it doesn't like resolve the battle part, but it at least resolves the father-son relationship that the audience wanted to be resolved. So it's very effective in the way that Shakespeare converged the two plots and used the diction and word plays and puns to convey the characters and the story and the meaning.